Part of your application in graduate school is to actually provide reasons as to why you're a good fit. Now, that comes in the form of like curriculum vitae, that comes in the form of like you answering the questions in the application portal, and also all of the transcripts that you submit. But there's this one specific document where it is your chance to actually explain the finer details about you, about your approach in research, and about the question that you want to answer. In this video, I will explain to you the purpose, the reason why you have to go through this grueling process of writing an essay. So I can boil it down into two statements. The first one is, this letter is a great way for you to make a case of yourself by reasonably filling the gaps and concretely supplementing other parts of your application, particularly the CV. And the next statement is, actually, this letter is important because it allows you to sell in a professional manner the idea that you are a great fit for this program, that you are a perfect match for them, and it's actually a win-win situation for you and the institute. Let's start with reasonably. This letter is a chance for you to fine-tune it and give it details, like personal touches on the reasonings behind you did this degree, the reasoning behind this publication and whatnot. Next one is concretely. Now, when you explain things, of course, you need to give concrete answers. That allows the graduate school admissions committee to see how you reflected on why you did this thing. Because it's so easy to just say like, oh, this is the result. Yes, great. What exactly did you learn from it? So the next one is selling the idea professionally. What they need to know is that you can present yourself, the ideas that you have, the questions that you have, the proposals that you have, and the experiences that you had. No spelling mistakes, no grammatical mistakes, in a logical manner, and like in a very structured way. It's a win-win. You have to make them realize that you can actually contribute to the data and that you can actually expand the limits of science. And it's a win for you because you will gain network, you will gain skills, you will gain knowledge. So you have to sell those two ideas, that it's a win for them and it's a win for you. All right, so for this part of the video, what I will be explaining to you are the differences between personal statement, statement of purpose, and letter of motivation. Sometimes people say, no, it's interchangeable. Statement of purpose is the same as letter of motivation. There is some truth to that, but they have certain details that are different from each other. So first, let's start with a personal statement. Now, personal statement basically asks you the question, who are you? Who are you as a person? So what's your perspective in life? What is your personality, your outlook, your perspective on like academia, doing research and stuff like that? Now, the thing with personal statements is it does not factor in how you're going to do that. And that's where statement of purpose comes in. Statement of purpose asks this question: why are you doing this? Why are you driven to answer this problem? What makes it so influential to your life? And what are the things that you can do to actually solve this problem? Unfortunately, sometimes statement of purpose doesn't explain why you want to go to the program. Now that's where letter of motivation comes in. Now, letter of motivation asks the question, what makes you do this? More specifically, what makes you apply to this program? So you're going to write a letter that is part about yourself and part the reasons why you're going to this institute or this laboratory. These are the main differences. But what I can suggest you to do with your letter is to take the components of personal statement wherein you explain who you are and what's your perspective in life, and then statement of purpose, what drove you to answer this problem and what do you think you can do to answer this problem, and a letter of motivation where you explain why the program and the institute itself can help you do that. That creates a fuller picture of who you are as a researcher, as a person, and just someone who wants to help society. For this part of the video, what I will be explaining with you guys is how to actually start writing your letter. So there are 4 steps of you doing this. The first one is research and reflect. Second one is you have to plan the writing of the essay, and then next one is to actually write the essay, and the last will be review. Let's focus on research and reflect. Now, even before you start applying for graduate school, you need to answer, or you need to reflect on this part. Why do you want to do PhD? PhD is 5 to 7 years, 3 years if you're lucky, of blood, sweat, and tears, and a lot of failures. So why do you want to go through this process in your life? Usually what PhD candidates are thinking about, and what PIs and what the admissions committee look at, is what question do you want to answer? This question that you are very passionate about and you want to write about it. So you have to reflect on that. Why you as a person think that you can answer this question. Next is research. Research the program, and then the institute, and then the lab, and then the PI. It is important to relate to the admissions committee that you understand what the program entails. You understand that these are the resources, this is the curriculum, this is how they're structuring the PhD, and you know it yourself. Next is you have to research about the institute. Now, your research question has to relate to the research institute itself. Relate that to how the institute can answer your question. You can look up all of the resources, facilities that they offer, and think of like, okay, can you construct a research plan out of this? Name dropping a research, specific research in your letter, and you think that you can expand on that, and you think that there's more avenues for you to do that, and you think that the laboratory and the resources in that laboratory can allow you to answer that, then put it in. Open up your essay to the point that this is the research field that you want to go into. So next part of the scheme of writing things is actually planning. You need to create the structure out of it. Which goes first? The information about yourself, information about the institute, information about your background, or do you want to start with conclusion? It is definitely up to you, and there are a lot of resources online on what kind of structures they use in their essays. I really recommend you to think about a story, a full detailed story from the very start to the very end. If you can't think it like that, think of it as how you write a publication. You start with introduction, you include the significance, you include the questions that was not answered through the methodologies, and then results that you think will come out of it, and then the conclusion. These examples, they're basically stories. And if you can present yourself through a story properly, like how people present their data, then it just shows you that you are organized and you are concise. Now, next one is writing. A lot of people have their writing blocks. They're stuck with their first sentence, if not first paragraph, and they cannot proceed. So what I can suggest you start doing is to just write what you think you want to put in your essay. It doesn't have to be grammatically correct. It doesn't have to have logical, reasonable sense in the structure. Just write down all of those details in paper. And then when you finish and you think that you've written down everything in your brain that you think the admission committee would want to see, start structuring them. Okay, and the last part is the most important part. Send that to your colleagues, send that to your past supervisors. Hear their feedback, because sometimes you forget some details or you did not explain the detail properly. You lack the concrete examples. So 4 things: research, reflection, plan, write, and then review. Now that you have a general idea of how to write a letter from A to B, now let's look at the content of the letter. You will use all of the research that you did and all of the reflections that you had and put them in a concise manner. In a logical, direct, cohesive, and effective flow, answer these questions. Number 1, what question, and what field of science. This should be the core of your essay, and all of the things that you write down in your essay should circle back to this question. In the first paragraph, you give a brief idea of what is the question. In the second paragraph, you go into the details. In the third paragraph, you give concrete examples that circles back as to how you want to answer the questions. You always have to circle back to this specific core questions that you have. And this is, again, should be the reason why you're doing PhD. Number 2, what and why these goals? You're doing a PhD, sure, to get your publications, great, so that you can have like credit when you're doing research, fantastic. But you need to explain why. So why these overall goals, and also you have to go to specific goals too. So why do you think this is the right path of science for you to answer the question? Why do you think this is the correct way of approaching things? So you have to explain the goal, and usually people explain that within two sentences. But the essence is you have to connect the goals that you have in the letter to the core questions that I mentioned in the first question. Next one is why the program, why the institute, why the PI, and why the lab. Now, I already gave you an extensive idea of how you research on that, and you just have to compound it into like a single paragraph or a 2-paragraph if you have a 2-page essay. Next one is the most important one. Why you? Why should you be the perfect candidate for this program? So relate yourself to the program, relate your drive to answering these questions, and how the Institute will see you as a vital member of scientific community that will answer this question. All of these 4 questions are really essential, sure, but they stem from a single question that every letter should answer. Is that what would an admission committee want to know from you? They want to see who you are as a PhD candidate and as a PhD student, and they want to see how you conduct yourself, how you present yourself, and how you present your ideas. You really need to have good research behind you and a really good, strong argument as to why you are the perfect fit. So now your question is, how do you structure your essay? Now, everyone has their own thing of doing it. You need to do that for yourself, but I will give you a really good example of how people usually do it. This is an example by MIT Biological Engineering Communication Laboratory. In this 2-page essay structure, he was able to put in who he is as a person, and then his history of understanding the science and trying to answer that science. What are the methodologies? What are the approaches that he did? And the last part is about the program. Who are the professors you want to work with? What are the resources that you're thinking of using? The methodology that you will figure it out. It's in there. And the last part is the conclusion, wrapping everything up. So this is a great example of what you can do when you need to write a 2-page essay structure. So now that you saw a really great example of an essay structure, you saw in that example like specific questions that they included in each part of the essay. And I told you before that there are actually 4 essential core questions that you need to answer and like 1 major one. But you can actually further expound on these questions with more specific questions. I'll give you an example of some questions that answers the question of who you are, answers the reason why you're going to this program, and your future career goals. So you can pause the video when I show you the questions, but this resource, I found this from Study in Germany, and they posted this in a really concise and really great video that I want to share with you guys. So they broke it down into 3 parts. The individual questions here, so they ask you who you are, specifically why you are doing this. And then the next part is about the program. So here are the questions. You can pause the video. So it's very specific. And then the last part is your future goal. Is really important, and I cannot stress this enough. You need to have reflection of your past and your future in your essay. How can you use this opportunity, this PhD program, to help you in the future? Now that you have an idea of what an essay structure should look like, and you also have the questions that you can answer to give finer details of your essay, I will share with you one method that really helped me in writing my experiences in a complete and concise and really informative way. So I found this method from University of Leeds Career Center. It's called the STAR method for writing experiences. So STAR is an abbreviation. Let's go first with the first letter, situation here. So basically, situation describes the context of the experience. So what is the background? How did that experience start? And then the next one is tasks. What was required of you to answer or address the situation? Next one is action. Explain what exactly you did to address the situation. And then the last one is result and reflection. The most important part in writing experiences is the reflection. So what did you achieve? What did you learn? And would you do anything differently after doing that? So let's look at an example here from one of our GradMAP mentors. The mentor started with, I pursued master's studies in geology, specializing on calcareous nanofossils. I was fortunate enough to work on core samples obtained from the International Ocean Discovery Program, IODP, Expedition 349 in the South China Sea. So in this part of his essay, he actually gave us a clear picture of what he is talking about. First, what was the situation? He was doing a master's degree. Where? In what? Geology. And what exactly did he do in geology? Which is working with core samples from this particular program, specifically calcareous nanofossils. So after establishing the candidate's S or situation, the candidate moved on to T, the task, what was required of him to do. So here the candidate said, where I refined the calcareous nanofossil biostratigraphy, documented the morphometric changes of the genus Gephyrocapsa, and interpreted paleooceanographic changes during the latest Pliocene to Pleistocene. Now that we know that our candidate is studying in geology, working on calcareous nanofossils, we now figure out that the task that was required of the candidate was to actually refine this specific biostratigraphy method and use documentations for this specific genus. And of course, to interpret any evolutionary data that was gathered from this experiment. Now let's move on to A. The candidate started with, I was introduced to calcareous nanofossil taxonomy, utilizing it for age dating and paleoceanographic interpretations. I was also introduced to research on other microfossils such as modern planktonic and benthic foraminifera, large benthic foraminifera, as well as invertebrate fossils such as brachiopods. I learned to familiarize myself with a large suite of microfossils and invertebrate fossils, from sponges to echinoderms. Now that we know that he was doing geology, that he was focused on this methodology to understand calcareous nanofossils, we actually had an idea of what he actually did, the actions that he did for his master's studies, which is to use age dating interpretations, to use data, or to use his samples and analyze each and every sample he needed based on the methodologies he mentioned from the task. And as you can see, there's a lot of samples that he did to understand it. Let's move on to the last part, the most important part actually, the results and reflection. The candidate started, the undertakings brought a realization that in studying fossils, there is so much more to discover than evolution alone. This was the tipping point for me. Indeed, this decision led me to engage in research work as a lifelong career. My experiences in the Institute has introduced me to a suite of topics that piqued my interest, but I am open to and willing to pursue similar types of studies. So he gave us a really great paragraph wherein he described what he actually realized and learned from this experience. It's not so much about like the actual conclusion from his research, but actually what pushed him forward to studying this field more. So I like what he mentioned here, that this was the tipping point for me. This is an important, I mean, you don't need to use it all the time, but this was an important signal for the reviewers or the readers that there is some reflection, there is some direction that the candidate took in order to further himself into the field of the science. This is a really great method for giving a real picture of your experience. But it is also a great way for you to explain your proposal in the essay. In the structure of your essay, there's a part there where you have to relate the institute and the research to you. You can use the STAR method for that. Okay, so I'll give you another example. This is the one I wrote for my letter of motivation, and it's about cancer, basically. So the situation is this. Tumor can evade the immune mechanism of eliminating faulty and cancerous cells, with studies showing that mutation of cell proliferation genes causes cancer. I became interested in the effects of these mutations have on the intercellular signaling for cell growth and survival. It gives you an idea of what is the research field, cancer. The idea that I have, that I think it's a really interesting way of looking at cancer. So that was the situation. I wanted to do cancer research, and this is the idea that I presented. Let's move on to T. So Dr. Anne Catherine Klassen is leading research projects on stress response signatures both observed in wound healing and tumor growth. Her insights regarding the development of tumors on epithelial tissues are helpful to my hypothesis stated earlier. What was required of me here is that I need to relate research of this lab here with my hypothesis here. I was able to relate what she was doing to what I need. And a good way for me to show that was her insights. I wrote down her insights regarding the development of tumors are helpful to my hypothesis. Now let's move on to the A. I am interested in the opportunity to collaborate with Dr. Klassen on visualizing and analyzing the initial failure of immunity at the onset of aberrant cell growth. I gave you a methodology. That's basically action right here, okay? So in writing proposals like this, and also comparing that with writing experiences, you always need to show the specific methodology that you used. Last one is the reflection. This collaboration would further our understanding of crucial stress signals that promotes tumorigenesis in the tumor microenvironment. It gives a direction of where it will go. You have reflected on okay, it will actually go here, and I think this will be an avenue for further research. That's what I wanted to relate in that last sentence, is that as I can see, I have a little bit of foresight that this research will go here, and that this research will actually expand more, if not answer the questions that we have about cancer. So STAR method, you can use that for past experiences, and you can also use that to relate, to do a proposal relating you to the laboratory, to the program, or to the institute. As a conclusion for this whole video, if there's one thing that I want you to remember, write your essay that is descriptive of who you are as a researcher. Whatever we shared with you can only do so much. Tell them the truth. You are driven to do PhD research. The GradMAP team we appreciate all of your support and all of your inquiries for your application. And it's not just you who's learning, we actually are learning from you too, and how to improve our service of helping Filipino people. I hope you have learned a lot of information. I hope you learned the essence of how to write a great essay. Now it's your turn to actually write the whole damn thing, okay? Don't stress about it too much, and cheers.